Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory. So, come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. Nan will now play for us hymn number 378. We will sing verses 1 through 4. Lord, speak to me that I may speak. Lord, speak to me that I may speak in the echoes of thy tone, and the hour is sought, so let me speak. I have children lost and lone. Oh, teach me, Lord, that I may teach the precious things thou dost impart. And bring my words that they may reach the hidden depths of heaven. Oh, fill me with thy fullness, Lord, my very heart will overflow. Kindling thought and glowing word, thy love to tell, thy grace to show. For use me, Lord, use me and me, just as thou wert when and where, until thy blessed face I see, thy rest, thy joy, thy glory share. Please be seated. Let's speak the responsive prayer together. We clasp the hands of those that go before us.
And the hands of those who come after us.
We enter the circle of each other's arms.
And the large circle of lovers whose hands are joined in hands.
And the larger circle of all creatures.
As we
Through a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it. Now, have the lighting of this candle. Actually, it's already lit. And I say, why do we light this candle? The peace. Joys and concerns now.
And Jackie, they both have COVID. So they are speaking here in this one. But Jackie Norris and Warren Wildman, and their Warren's getting better, and Jackie's getting some better. She got it after it. So
Yes. Yes, if we didn't hear that, Warren and Jackie have COVID, and we'll think of them today. Other joys and concerns, yes.
Dr. Powell was taken to the hospital on Thursday at emergency surgery, and he's not doing very well. So first for viral. And we also we're notified that Shirley Peace for observation. So
Two friends in the hospital, one not doing very well. Please, let's think of them.
Me having surgery tomorrow.
What was the name again?
Rob.
Well, Rob, we wish you well.
Thank you.
We wish you well. Yes,
I have a joy announcing that the new Tunbridge nurse is just had a baby boy yesterday.
new life, a new son for the Tunbridge nurse.
Prayers of concern for my nephew, John Belfay, his family, passed away.
For the passing of John, let's think of especially his family and friends who are mourning him. Yes, yes, our former president, Jimmy Carter, was just put on hospice care, as I'm sure many of you have heard this morning. He's at home with his family where he really should be. You think of him. Anyone else? Let's have a quiet moment.
They had us there and saw it in Tokyo and
Yes, for the folks in Turkey and Syria who have suffered so much and are still suffering so much, and for all peoples on this planet right now who are suffering. We are very, very fortunate to be where we are, to be living in peace and in this beautiful valley. Let's have a few quiet moments with all these things in our minds. I would like to share with you today a new version of the Lord's Prayer. And this version of the Lord's Prayer may actually be much closer to what Jesus himself wanted to convey that day on the hill. It is the direct translation from Aramaic, which was the language of his time. Language, and it was the language in which this was delivered. So let us say this together. I find it especially beautiful. O cosmic further of all radiance and vibration, soften the ground of our being and carve out a space within us where your presence can abide. Fill us with your creativity, so that we may be empowered to bear the fruit of your mission. Let each of our actions bear fruit in accordance with our desire. Endow us with the wisdom to produce and share what each being needs to grow and flourish. Untie the tangled threads of destiny that bind us, as we release others from the entanglement past mistakes. Do not let us be seduced by that which would divert us from our true purpose, but eliminate the opportunities of the present moment. For you are the ground and the fruitful vision, the birth, power, and fulfillment, as all is gathered and made whole again. And so it is. So, amen. So, it's beautiful. We'll have a little more music. I like to sing, I like to play the piano, and I think many of you probably know this song. It goes way, way back to maybe the 1950s, the Broadway stage. the show to, oh, what a beautiful morning from, I think it's Oklahoma. Yeah. And I hope you'll join me when we come around to the chorus. Because that's a rousing chorus. And it is a beautiful one. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The corn is as wide as an elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. All the cattle are standing like statues. All the cattle are standing like statues. They don't turn their heads as they see me ride by. And a little brown parrot is winking her eyes. Now, oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. There's one more verse. All the sounds of the earth are like music. All of the sounds of the earth are like music. The breeze is so busy, it don't miss the tree. And the old tree. Here we go. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Oh, what a beautiful day. So I'll take a moment right now to thank those who left an offering this morning to the church. In 1901, William James, who was considered to be the father of American psychology in Edinburgh, Scotland, based on his study of the varieties of religious experience. A classic book of that same title was published a year later in 1902. I read that book more than 50 years ago, and it had a great impact on me. I was in my early 20s then, and had long released myself from the bonds of my French Catholic upbringing. But when I was a child, I memorized the Catholic catechism, Who is God? God is our Heavenly Father who made us. As a child, I thought, well, I guess somebody has really figured this out. But at age 74, I now know a little better. I assume you are all here today because, like me, you long to know the answer to that question. Who is God? I can honestly say that after thinking and praying and meditating and living all these years, I still don't fully know what God or what the divine is. I do know that it is, but that is only because I feel that presence in my life and in my world. It remains the ultimate mystery for me, and I rather like it that way. There is a great comfort in knowing that my little self is not expected to understand everything. Things are being taken care of by something that does not require our full understanding in order to exist. What a relief. On the other hand, my human longing to know has kept me hot on the trail of God. But I've learned that the best I can do is to approach an understanding of God through the things of this world. And music and sound are things of this world. An ancient creation myth of the Inuit Indians of North America starts with this line. In the beginning was the sound. Much the same thing is written in the Bible, in Genesis. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is a sound. In fact, sound is featured as a primal force in a multitude of creation myths from various cultures and religions throughout the world. And now, even the secular scientists of the 21st century proclaim that the universe began. Was that God uttering the first word, the Big Bang? Or laughing? Or was God shouting? Or maybe simply exhaling very audibly? As you can see, my early images of an anthropomorphic God remain lurking in my brain. But I reason that if sound were the first thing that God created, perhaps it is through sound that we can commune with God most closely. William James understood that religion or spirituality was actually a very individual and personal experience for human beings. One size does not fit all. He went even further to describe the kinds of mystical experiences, all very personal, that his studies subjects reported to him. He wrote, there are 4 markers of a mystical or spiritual experience. This is what he found. 1, it is ineffable. It is very difficult to describe. It must be experienced to be understood. It is noetic. It's a kind of knowledge . 3, it is transient. The experience is of limited duration. And 4, passivity is involved. The experiencer is passive and unable to control the coming or going of the experience. It's like a surprise. You'll notice that the word experience is repeated often here. William James encouraged us to think of religion and spirituality as something palpable, something felt, something immediately experienced in our world. And the experience is injected with a lot of power, which certainly gets our attention and is unforgettable. When I was a young woman, still in my 20s, I had a very awesome sound experience. While lying quietly in bed, waiting for sleep, a single raindrop nestled in the window screen and reflecting light from a street lamp caught my eye. Without any intention of seeking an altered state of consciousness, since I was just lazily focusing my sight on something sparkling, I gradually became quite relaxed. However, I was not asleep. I began to notice a very faint humming sound deep in the recesses of my inner ear, and my attention, although still on the shining raindrop, gradually was diverted to this strange sound. The sound grew in small increments and steadily until all my attention was placed on it. While fully focused on this sound, its dynamics changed drastically. The volume and force of it continued to grow and grow and grow until I felt that I would be consumed by its power. I felt totally in its control. I began to experience awe and panic. And just when it seemed that I would fully merge with and be carried away by this indescribably potent force, something in me grabbed hold of my connection to my physical body and surroundings, and I was rather violently released and returned, if you will, to the quiet of my bed, perspiring and panting and very shaken. Now, you may wonder if I had been under the influence of a drug or suffering that I was not. This experience came to me unsought and unexpected, and was all the more powerful because of that. I believe to this day that I was given a glimpse of the all-powerful, sonorous being that grounds all of us and the universe. The notion of God took on infinite and very real dimensions for me, and it was through sound that I encountered that truly awesome and divine force. I'll just interject here, I think that's very appropriate for me because I'm a musician and sound is so central to my life, so it's the language that really reaches me deeply. This remarkable experience has informed my healing work with music and sound over the past almost 50 years. Something seemingly magical often occurred when I was able to offer just the right soothing or uplifting or energizing or quieting kind of music to one of my patients. I can only account for this by citing divine intervention, using sound as a potent tool. I have sound and music art. Let me tell you about 3 experiences I had with patients to illustrate that. I had never met Mrs. B before, and as I watched her from the hallway in the nursing home, she was wailing alone in her room, obviously confused and deranged, moving articles back and forth from bureau to bed and back again. I walked in quietly and I caught her eye. I thought she might become agitated and even attack me, which sometimes happens with the elderly. But after I greeted her and began to sing very softly, her energy changed. She listened intently for a few moments and then agreed to sit with me on her bed while I continued to sing to her. At the end of the song, she began to speak, and she told me that a long time ago, her 15-year-old son had been killed. She started to cry, wrapped her arms around me, and kissed me on the face. Something about the quiet music made this lady feel safe, and she was able to entrust to me the cause of all of her deep suffering. Lived in a small apartment. He had kidney cancer and she had Alzheimer's disease. Mrs. M studied music many years ago and sang and conducted choirs for church events. She hadn't sung in many years when I met them. But when I offered to accompany her on a new keyboard her husband had just bought her, she lit up and she led me to the piano. Her husband settled himself nearby and listened while she sang songs by Richard Rogers, forgetting many words, but making up new ones as she went along. Mr. M's astonished enjoyment of his wife's happiness was so obvious. And Mrs. M said, "Singing again has lifted me up." Pianist and writer Maureen McCarthy Draper writes, "Music challenges us to transcend the limits we have imposed on who we are." I think that's what Mrs. M experienced that day. Finally, one day I was playing classical piano music on the medical surgical unit at the hospital. An older man wearing a Johnny and carrying his almost full urine bag on a pole shuffled. Curious, and he said, "Oh, would it be all right if I played? I don't read music, but sometimes it just comes out of me anyway." So of course I obliged. He sat down, moved his hands about, made some interesting sounds and rhythms, and proceeded to tell me that he had many problems, that he was both mentally and physically ill, that a psychiatrist was a good man, but he really didn't get it. He talked about God, about how he felt different talking to me, being listened to, about how music made him happy. I asked him if he had a home to go to after his hospital stay and whether or not he had a piano on his own. He said he had a small apartment but no keyboard. I encouraged him to do this very kind thing for himself. As he played, I could see him considering this as a possibility, and tears came to his eyes. It was as if some magical transformation were taking place that allowed him to consider himself important and loved enough to deserve having music in his life. He heard me when I said that God was never very. So those are my stories today. But I cannot leave you believing that you must be a musician to have access to this kind of encounter with the divine. We all have voices, perhaps even the same kind of voice God had when the first sound was made. And whether or not we can sing an aria or we are tone deaf, each of us can make our very own sound and experience the divine right here, in this world. Thank you for listening. We will now have a hymn, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore You, by Beethoven. And it's number 25, the red hymnal, and we'll do verses 1 through 4. Let's sing this out. This is such a happy, beautiful kissing Go in peace, speak truth, give thanks each day, respect the earth and its creatures, for they are like you. Care for your body, it is a wondrous gift. Be gentle with yourself, be of service, live simply, be guided by your faith and not your fear. Go lightly on your way and walk in a sacred manner.